This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. I'm pleased to have in our little studio today Crossover Preparatory Academy's two principals. They have two because they have a girls' school and a boys' school. They won the 2019 Oklahoma School Choice Award for Private School of the Year, and it's a very unique educational project that they have going here in Tulsa. Welcome, Dr. John Lapine and Joanna Shrewsbury.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
I want to let people know about you, John. You're the boys' school principal. Your degree is in economics from University of Tulsa. And while teaching and in administration at a public school in Tulsa, you earned a master's and PhD in educational leadership from OU in your spare time. And Joanna grew up in North Tulsa and went to University of Missouri-Columbia for her journalism degree. She became a TV news anchor and reporter in the Midwest and East Coast. And when she settled back in Tulsa with her three children, she taught in a public school until being invited to be the founding principal at Crossover Prep for Girls. And we go way back, and some of you may have heard me introduce someone else from her family. Linda Shrewsbury, her mother, talked with us in episode 43 as an innovative educator in teaching cursive in her program called Cursive Logic. And you were connected with that company for a while too, weren't you, Joanna?
Yeah, when I moved back to Tulsa from San Francisco about 6 years, I was helping my mom with that company. And I did that for about a year before I decided I really wanted to go into education.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be using a term a lot this morning that some of our listeners who may be overseas, who may be anywhere, are not familiar with, and that's North Tulsa. Would one of you describe what you see and what you mean when you say North Tulsa?
Joanna, as the native, I think you've got this one.
All right. And I will describe what I think of when I say North Tulsa. And then I think it'd be great, John, for you to say kind of what comes to your mind. So I have an interesting perspective on North Tulsa because this is where I grew up. And I live less than half a mile away from the home where I grew up. And this is where I feel at home. For me, North Tulsa is home. For me, North Tulsa are neighbors who care about their neighbors. It's a great place to be a kid, to ride a bicycle. It's a place where people kind of let families do their thing. I'm a single parent. And so I thought, man, like if I could choose any place to live, I would just go back to my neighborhood where if my kids have to walk themselves around or, take care of themselves for a while, people just be like, hey, leave those kids be. Their mom is busy working. So I felt like when I think of North Tulsa, it's actually a place that I associate with a lot of feelings of safety, of comfort, of neighbors, and community.
And when I moved to Tulsa to attend the University of Tulsa, one of the very first things I learned about the geography of Tulsa was don't go north of Admiral Street. I mean, like that was, if you're new to Tulsa, that is something that just feels like that attitude is in the water. And I didn't even take it to have a racial like context or implication when I first heard it. I just knew, oh, crime is bad north of Admiral, so don't go north of Admiral, and kind of accepted that unquestioningly for a few years. But the longer I've spent in Tulsa, the more I've learned. So North Tulsa is the section of the city that is historically African-American and economically depressed. There is less development out here, fewer businesses. A lot of the schools are struggling. A lot of the homes are in disrepair or need upkeep. And then there's also, people might describe North Tulsa as like an urban neighborhood, but in a lot of ways it feels more rural. There are just kind of like big tracts of woods and fields and forest where there just hasn't been economic development. And if you were to go The opposite direction, south of downtown, you would see, oh, there's a shopping mall there. Oh, there's a new strip of businesses there. And North Tulsa just is an area that kind of got hollowed out by white flight in the 50s and 60s. And then also with the ending of housing segregation, a lot of the black middle class moved to different parts of the city as well. And so that's, yeah, part of what has led to North Tulsa's current economic circumstances. And our organization, Crossover, is really focused on restoring our community and making North Tulsa everything it has been and can be.
Yeah, and when John describes North Tulsa from that perspective, I can, add to that. When I was growing up in North Tulsa, I had to drive 30 minutes for ballet lessons. I had to drive 20 minutes to go to a private school. We had to drive to go to a grocery store, to a gas station. We couldn't receive services, anything that we needed in North Tulsa, that we lived here, but we had to go south to get our needs met often.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to participate in a lot of the wonderful things that a community offers. That's unfortunate. And how would you describe the education landscape in North Tulsa?
Yeah, when I was growing up, my parents chose to homeschool us. And that was for a variety of reasons, but one, the neighborhood school that was our district school was a failing school, and my parents said, "Well, we don't want to send our kids to a failing school." When I was younger, we couldn't afford private school tuition, and so the option was to homeschool. And that was a great option. I loved homeschooling when I was a young kid. I had a lot of time to play outside. I enjoyed my mother and my sister, my brother. So as a child, I was homeschooled, and that's how my parents took care of education. There is one fantastic high school in North Tulsa that is really, it's well known, Booker T. Washington. And I did go to high school at that school, and that was the first time I attended school in my area. But for middle school, that was all South Tulsa, and that was private schools until I was able to get to the magnet school in the
Mhm.
district.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, my entire career as an educator has been on the north side of town, public and private schools. And the word that comes to mind for me when I think about education in North Tulsa is unstable. And I say that in a couple of different ways. When I was at McLean Junior High School and senior high school, I would maybe start the year off with 35 or 40 kids on my roster. And my first year, kind of my eyes popped out of my head seeing, oh, they gave me 37 kids in this class. That's crazy. I don't even have 37 desks. And then on the first day of school, it would not be 37 kids who showed up. It would be 31 kids who showed up. And then the next week, there would be 6 kids who aren't on my roster anymore, but 3 new
Oh.
kids who just transferred in. And so all throughout the year, there's just kind of like kids coming, kids going. And then the exact same thing on a staff level, where if you are at the same high school, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, you might get to your senior year and half the teachers that you've had no longer work there by the time you walk across the stage for
Oh, wow.
graduation. So just a lot of instability from the student side, from the staff side, school leadership. Yeah, kind of people coming and going, transferring, moving jobs, and it's hard to build a great institution when there's that kind of instability at the core of
Mhm.
it.
I want to get back to that, the ebb and flow of the faculty, and something that you wrote on that subject later, John. But okay, do you have any um, other facts and figures that would portray for the audience what you were going into and why you wanted to target North Tulsa educationally in starting these schools?
Absolutely. When we launched the school, I was part of the team that was dreaming and designing crossover prep before we launched. And one of the figures that really prompted the entire idea of starting a school and starting with an all boys school was throughout Tulsa Public Schools. This was 2015 or 2016, a year or two before we launched. We did an open records request to find out how many African American male students had a college ready ACT score. So 21 is typically considered like the cutoff or the threshold for a college ready score. And out of all 9 high schools in the district, there were only 23 African American males who met that benchmark. And not 23%, 23 total. And then that includes the magnet school that Joanna went to. So it was just a shockingly low figure. And that was kind of just a big point for us. It's not like college is the end all be all of education for every single student, but feeling like there was a lot of wasted potential, like there were young men and also young ladies, but we did start with the all boys school because we felt like there were young men who had more potential and it just was not being realized for whatever reason in the public school system.
To put it mildly, yeah. That's
Yeah, and one of the things that I think stands out about crossover is when John mentioned the instability of the students and the instability of the staff at these different schools. Crossover follows a Christian community development model, and a big part of that model is that the people who are committed to the ministry move to the ministry district. So anyone who works at Crossover Prep full time lives in the same area as the school, in the same area as the students. And that creates just an amazing amount of stability because we don't have teachers driving into North Tulsa because this is a neighborhood that needs help. We have teachers who are living here who are saying, we are partnering with our neighbors and with our families now to create an educational system that will serve our students well. And so what's happening at Crossover feels so different because it's not a let's tackle this problem for those people. It's, hey, we are tackling a problem for our families because we are neighbors in this community and we want to see our children thriving.
I love that. It's just incarnational and just so important, and I think key to your success, which you are having. So let me, to your point, both of you mentioned sort of the overall community development vision that Crossover is part of. Can you tell our audience what the bigger entity and vision is?
Yeah, so crossover is kind of the umbrella for several different branches of ministry happening here in North Tulsa. It started as a church about 17 years ago, and the church said, like, we really want to have more of an impact than another place to worship on Sunday. And so they started looking at what are the needs in this community. And it started with just, I think, youth sports.
Yeah.
And the pastor realized he was coaching a second grade team. And he will say, Pastor Philip Abode, that he had more conversations with people through coaching his team than he did through being a pastor. And he realized our church has to be outward facing. And so they started just addressing some basic needs here in North Tulsa. Healthcare was one of them. There's just nowhere to see a doctor. You have people who want to pay to see a doctor, and there's no doctor to pay for a visit. So they started a healthcare clinic. We now have two sites, and these are not free care clinics, these are for profit clinics. But finally, people have a place to take their insurance and receive consistent primary care. Then they realized there's so many homes in North Tulsa that are boarded up. Uh, it was hard, like a lot of lenders won't offer mortgages for people buying in North Tulsa. You have to buy all cash, and that limits who's able to buy a home. And so there just were a lot of homes that weren't ever bought or used. So Crossover said, we're going to start buying these homes. We're going to have a development company that renovates these homes and creates nice, affordable homes for families to live in that they can be proud of. So from youth sports to healthcare to development, the development company, and then the school came along and they said, families in North Tulsa don't have an option for a private school in their neighborhood. And that's an option, a choice that parents deserve to have. We wanted to make that option available to any family who wanted to choose it. So Crossover was really committed at the beginning to being tuition free. Now there are several programs that our state has created that allows parents to get tax credit for the tuition costs. So it still remains no out of pocket expense for families.
And so it is a religious school. It's I remember being in a meeting about it because I've had some input through the years, and there was initial deliberation about whether to try to be a charter school or whether to forego those huge tsunamis of money that come being a tax-supported school or whether to be a Christian school, and that hard decision was made a long time ago, and yet you're free. You're tuition free. So
We would have had to do a lot less fundraising over the past many years if we had gone the charter
mm,
school route. But just from the beginning, as you know, we felt like the gospel was too important to have that be an after school program or to have that be in the background, in the back of the minds of school leadership. We said, no, we need to be able to explicitly tell our students the truth and tell them that this is not just about education and getting the best degree you can get so you can make the most money that you can make, that's not the meaning of life, that your purpose here is higher and deeper than that. And in terms of like everything from curriculum choices to staff hiring, we didn't want to feel like we had to compromise on that. We wanted a Christian staff that would be committed to the same principles, the same beliefs for all of us as an organization. And yeah, God has been faithful to that. God has provided year after year. No student has had to pay tuition. This is our 7th year of operation. We have over 100 students between the boys and girls school. And yeah, so God has blessed and honored that commitment from the beginning, that the religious aspect of it, that was not going to be optional, that was not going to be compromised, that was not going to be smuggled into an after school program, but that would be a core part of our identity as a school. One thing that I think gets forgotten in debates over school choice is that we already have school choice in this country. It's just called being wealthy. If you're rich, you already have access to whatever school you want to send your kids. You can buy a house in the nicest school district. You can pay tuition to any private school. And so for us, a big priority was, hey, just because your family might not have resources, just because you're a single mom and you're trying to, pay rent and pay the bills, does not mean that your kids shouldn't get the access to a Christian education and to an education that reflects the values you have as a family. And so for us, we were committed to being a private school from the beginning, even though that meant a lot of fundraising, because we think that a Christian education should be available to anyone, not just those with the means to afford it.
And I'll add one thing here. We are a Christian school, but we do not require our families to be Christian families. So, what we say is that it's a Christian school. All of the educators that you interact with will be Christian. And if you are a family, you will know what it means to be a Christian when your child attends here. But it does not have to be your faith. Anyone can come to crossover prep. But we're just very upfront about what we believe and what we will practice while the students are
I think
here.
that's so important, and, I don't know of a Christian school in this country that operates differently, and yet Christian schools get accused all the time of discriminating or, only not reaching out to the community, and that's just preposterous. There is every kind of kid's spiritual state is welcomed, and you want to educate the whole child, and you don't require that they form into the spiritual entity that you have, you know, in your heart. So thank you for clarifying that, Joanna. And there are some schools that require that parents be Christians, but that's not even part of your admissions requirement either, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no parent has to sign a statement of faith or have a church membership verification form. A family could be a different religion, they could be a Christian non-practicing, and I would guess that maybe a quarter of our students are coming from families that are in a Christian church regularly on Sunday. And the vast majority of our students are from families that would identify as Christian. Yeah, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but then just in terms of how that actually plays out in their lives, that looks really different depending on the family. Yeah.
And we'll have, I feel like there are a variety of families who will be at crossover prep, and I think that's so essential to our purpose, because one of the principles of Christian community development is bringing resources into under-resourced areas. And so when we have families who have the option of paying for a private school in a nice neighborhood, but they choose to come to crossover prep, they bring the resources with their family and redistribute them and offer them here. So you have families whose students could test into exclusive schools, but instead they choose to come to crossover, and all of a sudden their child is now the friend of a student, And they're like, well, hey, I'm going to help you with your math assignments because you're a great basketball player and we need you to get eligible to be on the team. And so you have this beautiful sharing of resources instead of clustering them into communities, where people kind of look more similar to one another, they live similar lives. All of a sudden, you're taking resources that could be exclusively for a family and sharing them with the community. And one of the things that I love that I see in the classrooms, like crossover prep in the girls' school, math is more self-paced. And so we'll do units together, but students can work ahead, they can work more slowly, they finish the unit together. But we see some students who are very gifted in math finish that unit quickly. And then they turn around and they start teaching the lessons to the other students who are moving at a slower pace. And we know that you have to really understand something in order to teach it. We can all complete the assignment, but when you're explaining it, then you really have mastery. So we see students, even who are excelling, go back and build their skills through teaching. And, they get that exercise of repetition and reinforcement. The student who is not as gifted in math gets the extra tutoring and the help, and both students are better off for
Mhm.
it.
And that plays right into our school motto of at the boys' school, I am my brother's keeper. At the girls' school, we show we are sisters by our love. But both of those mottos pointing to this reality of education is not just an individual affair. It's not just about me and my grades and my diploma and my degree. This is something we're doing as a community. We're in classes together for a reason. Whatever helps my brother helps me. Whatever hurts my brother hurts me. And so even having that approach educationally is connected back to one of our core values as a school.
Mhm. And so at Crossover Prep, we are in an area in North Tulsa where we want to see wonderful education choices for the families here. But it's not just the families in North Tulsa who are sending their children to Crossover Prep. Families also move to this area because they want to be part of the ministry and they want to share the resources that God has gifted with them to the community here who we have fewer resources in North Tulsa.
Mhm.
That's beautiful, and, I am remembering that, I interviewed Ilana Horwitz several months ago, and I can't remember what episode, but you all hustle out and find that episode when you're through listening to this one. It was God grades and graduation was her big study she'd done while at Stanford on whether students who believe in God do better academically. She found that the answer was yes, and she found that the differential showed up the most dramatically in the economically disadvantaged demographics of kids.
Mhm.
And so I think your instinct
Yeah.
of having a spiritual emphasis in the community you're trying to help is very significant, and it's gonna have impact.
If I can build on that and just say, I have three children, two of whom attend crossover. My daughter is 15, my son is 12, and she's at the girls' school, he's at the boys' school. And the conversations I am able to have with them about our family's involvement and ministry here at Crossover. I mean, I hope and believe that God is using our family to bless others, but the blessings just keep getting multiplied back to us as well. And I think about the conversations with my daughter about leadership, about helping one another, about how she's starting to listen to the Holy Spirit. And this is part of her every
Mm,
day. She knows our family's on mission. She knows that we have a purpose. She knows that each day is important. She knows that she has, and I mean, it can be a lot for a 15-year-old, your mom being the principal of a school, but she knows she has a big responsibility when she walks into that school, not just to the other students, but to the other staff in that building. It's a complicated little 15-year-old life, but it's beautiful. And to see her already trying to listen to the Holy Spirit and be open to his work and to encourage the people around her, like she's going to high school for more than like a diploma so she can get into a great college. And I just think I would not trade that experience for the
mhm.
world.
That really was for me part of why I was interested in coming on the team when Crossover Prep was about to launch. My career in North Tulsa in public school, I realized I had fallen into this trap of trying to motivate students with the American dream. just kind of like a purely economic argument of, hey, if you do well in my ninth grade English class, you are more likely to graduate high school. You'll have a better chance of getting into college. And if you get into college and you get a degree, on average, you'll make about $10,000 a year more than somebody who just has a high school diploma. So that's why you should do what I'm asking you to do on this worksheet right now. It was kind of this extremely long term argument that ultimately boiled down to make more money so you can have a better life. And we obviously don't want students growing up in poverty. We don't want their opportunities to be limited, but our lives are about so much more than just making money. And so if you're only trying to motivate a student with this pecuniary outcome of, hey, you can follow this path and have more in your wallet, have more in your purse, that's actually kind of a weak motivation because humans are more complex than that. And so it makes perfect sense to me that, yeah, for a low income student in particular, a belief in God would be predictive of more educational success because you have this richer set of motivations. It's not just get the grades to get a degree to get a job. It's more about like, what is my purpose on this earth? And what is my responsibility towards the other people in my life and in my school? And obviously, that's going to result in more educational buy in.
And one of the things that we see at crossover prep, our attendance, like we knock it out of the park. Students come to school. I would put up our attendance against any other public school, private school. We have amazing attendance. And the students don't show up because of the facts they're learning in the classroom. They show up for the relationships. And I think that's probably true of every school. But the relationships here are so rich that we see students like the attendance is phenomenal and they want to be here because of at the girls' school, the love they're receiving. That's our motto. We show we are sisters by our love. And I tell students that's not just the rule for the students, that's the rule for every relationship in this building. Teachers to students, teachers to teachers, students to staff. Like that is how we show we are sisters. And I will have students go through fairly big family issues, a death in the family, kind of insecure housing, whatever's going on, but they'll text me and be like, Miss Shrewsbury, this just happened, but can I come to school tomorrow? And I'm like, you bet, come to school. And they know that when they're at school, that's where they belong. They feel loved there. It's the community. And so we just have outstanding attendance at crossover, and it's 100% because of the faith element.
I love that. I have to share that once I got to go to convocation at the boys' school. And Joanna actually shepherded me through it, but I was observing the boys and saw the boy-led concept in action, how I don't know what they're called, that you're divided into the kids are in multi-age
Yep.
subgroups,
Mm-hmm.
and then the
Mhm.
leader of that gets to wear the hoodie that says, "I am my brother's keeper," and
Mhm.
they would stand and report on at the beginning of the day on their group of students and talk about, who was present, and if there was someone missing, they would have made an effort to reach out already at the beginning of school
Mhm.
and find out where that child was and what they needed, and that I just was in tears. It was so beautiful.
We really, two things come to mind when you mention that. And one is our student leadership model, but the other is just the accountability of
Mhm.
community. And so we want every student to know they're an important part of this community and they can't just not show up. We're going to notice they're not here. We're going to care about why they're not here. We want to know if they're sick. We want to know if something happened with their family. And that accountability is, between the students, but I even see it filtering into the staff. Last week, we were taking midterms, and Miss Rodriguez started her midterm. Two students weren't there. She got the class going, brought in an academic coach to oversee them. She got in her car, drove to their house, and was like, "Get up. You've got a midterm today." Now, one of the students, they were twins. One was legitimately sick and she stayed home, but the other one was not. And she got in the car and she came and she took her midterm. And these girls know that we care about them. So when there is something happening that would prevent them from coming to school, car accident, laundry isn't done, these things happen, they just call and tell us they need a ride or a clean uniform. And we take care of it and get them to school because we care about them.
Mm.
The other thing that you mentioned with convocation, where this one of the things that I think is really beautiful at Crossover is we follow the student leadership model. We believe that the staying power of education is not in any particular fact we're going to teach these children in the classroom, but in the ownership they learn to take of their lives and of their education. And so a lot of the jobs that you would see adults doing in traditional schools, you will see students doing at Crossover Prep. So in the morning, students call the school to order. We all begin at convocation together. Students take attendance. Students take us through a catechism, through the motto, through the traits of a crossover man at the boys' school, the traits of a crossover woman at the girls' school. At the girls' schools, the students even the leader dismisses the teachers to go prepare the classrooms while the students are finishing their convocation meeting. The students dismiss themselves from convo in a very orderly fashion and they go to the classroom. And it's just a beautiful model seeing that students really can organize themselves. And when they're allowed to do this, they really embrace it. And it's so much easier to let them, to guide them in organizing themselves than it is to, as an authority figure, tell them, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that.
Yeah, at the boys' school, we have our students are older than at the girls' school because we have both a middle and high school right now, and the girls will be building out their high school starting next year. But we have a junior who is the school president, so he runs convocation in the mornings. He's the kind of the chief officer among the students for that meeting and for the school. And it's really cool to see the power of a student on student accountability where if he's leading the meeting and students are talking or being disruptive, he now has the confidence to call them out. I mean, even by name, to address a peer and correct his behavior. And he's respected for that. And he has the authority in the office to do that. And it's just great preparation for him as he prepares for leadership roles in his own life in the future. But it also sets the tone for the school in a way that I think is more effective than if we just had adults correcting and calling out students. When that accountability is horizontal as well as vertical, it's a lot more stable, it's a lot stronger.
And I'll say, I've seen my own son benefit from this. He came in here as a very young sixth grader. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm sending my little baby into this building with, like, by the time young men are 18, they're men. So I'm sending in this little boy with these men. I'm like, I hope they're kind to him. I hope they treat him well. This year, my son's in seventh grade. And when the incoming sixth graders started, he started to notice some real immaturities in these boys. And he was like, Mom, was I like that when I was in sixth grade? And I said, well, Michael, yeah, you were.
Kids
Did you
these
get some social
days.
feedback? Did you get some social feedback from the boys there? He's like, I sure did. And I'm a better man for it. And he was just able to see that the boys let him know what was what, and they made him a better person for it because it was done with compassion and love.
That's beautiful. I could just talk all day about all of that. Maybe we can get back, but I want to talk about how racial reconciliation is happening
Mhm.
as a result of your efforts and crossover efforts. In general, some people may not know if they've been living under a rock that Tulsa has kind of a fraught history with racism and a segregation problem. What are you seeing in your school community about the reconciliation that can happen?
Yeah, I mean, for the boys' school, one thing that I would say, we're a majority African American student population. Our staff is diverse with a number of different races represented on the staff, but probably 90% of our students are African American. There's a few white students, Hispanic. And because we have such a big emphasis on at the boys' school manhood and at the girls' school womanhood, the emphasis is less on what it means to be a black man or a black woman and just what it means to be a good man or a good woman. And there really doesn't have to be a racial dynamic or component to that. And you can see some really strong friendships and brotherhood happening from students who are in different races, whether that's they're on the basketball team together, they're on a school team competing on their academics. There are still just the opportunities for those strong friendships that are there. And really, you mentioned Tulsa's fraught history. There was the Greenwood Massacre in 1921, which received a lot of attention due to the centennial a few years back. one thing that has encouraged me in the work we do in Tulsa is that Tulsa has an extremely philanthropic community. The only reason that our school is able to exist and function is because of all of the people who don't live in North Tulsa, but who contribute to scholarships for students to go to crossover prep, who contributed to the capital campaign to build a facility for our nonprofit, our church, and our school. And so, even that to me is an example of reconciliation and healing because it's people from all over the city, all over Oklahoma, even who are contributing in some way, volunteering, contributing financially, moving to North Tulsa and working for the school, remaining in North Tulsa and working at the school, but working together across all kinds of racial lines and class lines to build an amazing school for the students in our part of town.
And one of the things that I've seen is the women at the girls' school. We have an all female staff, and we love each other. We just love going to work together. We also have a pretty diverse staff. There are only 10 of us right now because it's a small school, so I could list off how many of each one, but that's not the point. The point is that we love being together, and it's funny because I hadn't even thought of the mission of racial reconciliation. But when you put the focus on the Lord, like, you know, his kingdom is very diverse because he created all of us. And I think you stop thinking in terms of race and you just think in terms of what does connect you, and the Lord and the Holy Spirit connect us. His love for his creation and his kindness and calling us into his work to restore his creation to his original
Mm.
design. So I don't think about race much when I'm at crossover, even though it's the most diverse environment I've ever worked in, because we're just so busy being disciples and making disciples. But yeah, I guess that is happening too, I'm sure, while we're doing
Mm.
this.
And I think that models for the students too. They're seeing a faculty of teachers who might be of a variety of races, but are obviously friends who care about each other, who enjoy each other's company, who work well together. And so I think that that's another good witness to the students as well.
I read a study several years ago on how well students of various races mixed at lunch in schools where they had complete freedom to choose where they sat. And they compared
Mm.
public schools to private schools. And they found there was better, more complete interaction among the races in private schools, in their cafeterias. And
Mm.
so you're not seeing any difficulties between the students based on race?
No, I mean, yeah, I cannot think of an incident in 7 years at the school that has been like a black white racial tension between two students. Like if
Mhm.
we've had bullying, we've had fighting, we've had whatever interpersonal issues are going to come along with any community, any school setting. But no, yeah, our student population is definitely a majority African American, but the diversity that we do have, it's good and healthy diversity, and it hasn't resulted in kind of racial tension, racial fighting or grouping or clustering of any sort.
And I would say at the girls' school, especially when you start talking about appearance, because women can be really socialized to think about our appearances. And we have had some conversations with the girls about just what is a healthy way to think of yourself and what is important, because like yeah, some really unhelpful narratives are out there about what is beautiful. But what I have seen is a lot of fathers in particular want to send their daughter to crossover because they want her to know that she is beautiful. And
Hmm.
they feel that at other
Mhm.
schools, other private schools, their daughter can't meet a certain standard of beauty just because she may look different. And so at crossover prep, when they're in an environment where there's just more diversity, I guess that becomes less of an issue.
That is so beautiful. Well, real briefly, I wanna talk about a unique thing, and then I wanna hit the phenomenon of a single gender school And the smaller issue is that you're on a trimester calendar, right? Are you still on that?
That's right.
How do you like being on a trimester schedule rather than a semester schedule?
I like the trimester. The thing I dislike about it is that nobody else around here does it, and so sometimes when you're comparing our calendar to the community college calendar or the trade school calendar, Tulsa Tech, TCC, we don't necessarily sync up with them because everyone else in Oklahoma, it seems, is on semesters. But trimesters let students earn their credits pretty efficiently. So, for instance, one of our trimesters has the same amount of academic credit as a semester at another school would. And so students after 2 years of high school can have 3 science credits, which is how many you need to graduate from high school. And so the trimester calendar lets our ninth and 10th graders earn their mandatory credits pretty efficiently. And we love that because in 11th and 12th grade, we want them doing concurrent enrollment. This year, I think it's 77% of our juniors and seniors are doing concurrent enrollment either at Tulsa Tech or at Tulsa Community College. It's a big push for us because if you've done concurrent enrollment, that means that when you graduate, you are already experienced with some post secondary opportunities. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do the exact thing you studied in trade school or at TCC, but it does mean you've been exposed to it. You know whether you like it, whether it's a good fit, whether you want to keep pursuing it. And so being on a trimester calendar, more efficient credit earning, in the underclassmen years so that you can be focused on dual enrollment in the upperclassmen years.
Something I really like about the trimester is that I feel like there aren't those lulls like you get in the semester where it's like, okay, when is this going to wrap up? And you stop being less efficient in the
Mhm.
classroom. Like you begin, and by the time that you would be lulling, it's about time to end. And so you push through, to get the work done. And so I feel like it keeps the pace of the classroom more efficient than with the semester schedule.
Yeah.
It aligns better with
Oh,
athletics. There are 3 seasons for athletics: fall sports, winter sports, spring
yeah.
sports. And so having trimesters that match that makes a certain kind of
That's
sense.
good, yeah. Yeah, I went to law school on a trimester schedule. It was the first time in my many years, endless years of education that I experienced it as a student, and I loved it, and then the first place I taught in Dallas at Green Hill, they had a trimester schedule, and I loved it. You're
Mhm.
exactly right, Joanna, about the lull phenomenon. Okay, well, now this juicy subject of being single gender school communities. In episode 29 of Conversation Balloons, we had Michael Gurian on, and he talks about the different learning styles of boys and girls. And I got acquainted with him literally for the first time at a crossover event where he spoke and blew me away. So tell us why you are educating boys and girls separately and how it's going.
The original thinking behind that decision was twofold. One was we felt like there was a greater need in our community for young men, just looking at the educational statistics and seeing that African American males were at the bottom, however you want to measure it: graduation rates, college enrollment rates, college completion rates. So we felt like the need was greatest there. And we knew that an all male, all female environment that could reduce distractions for adolescent learners. And so those were the kind of twin motivations from the outset. And as we started the school, and then we discovered some of the work of Michael Gurian, we realized that you can design your classroom and your educational approach differently if you have all male and all female environments. Just learning more about the kind of the neuroscience and how an adolescent male's brain differs from an adolescent female's brain, we came to understand that our all boy classrooms should be using a lot of physical movement. They should be using a lot of competition, that visuals and graphics would be particularly engaging. And so just coming to understand that boys and girls learn differently and that that's okay. And in fact, it's an asset. It's something we can capitalize on to make the learning more male friendly, more female friendly, depending on the environment. And then, of course, the last thing for us is just wanting to have that spiritual piece of speaking to our students about what it means to be a godly young man, a godly young woman, and casting that vision for them of this is what true manhood should look like, this is what true womanhood should look like, and being able to speak into that really intentionally is another huge benefit of the non-coeducational approach.
And when you kind of think about the time of middle school and high school, that can be a really sensitive and awkward time of life for all of us. You're going through incredible physical and mental changes. You're burdened with, like, you're laying the foundation for your education. And when you just take off, like having to deal with the opposite gender all day, it frees the students up to really focus on the right things. So my daughter actually did sixth grade before crossover prep girls school started. So when the girls school started, my daughter was ready to go into seventh grade. And I just kind of decided, you know what? I want you at crossover prep. And she was like, you're making me redo sixth grade. I'm like, it's middle school. Nobody cares. You'll be fine. So she did sixth grade at a public school that was co ed, and she would get up early. She always wore her contacts. She never wore her glasses. She would brush her hair till it was completely straight. She was very worried about the clothing she wore. And, that was her morning routine. At Crossover Girls, she rolls out of bed and, waits till the last second. She throws her glasses on, she throws on her uniform, and she goes to school. The thing she worries about the most in the morning now is eating a healthy breakfast because she wants to be able to perform her best during third hour athletics. And those are the right worries for a 14, 15-year-old girl to have. How to best care for my body and myself so I can be my best, not how to look the best and what will people think of me when I show up in these clothing. And so I say it just makes it easy for the students to worry about the correct things and focus on the right
Mhm.
things for that age. And when you see these young women in the school and they're all, they're there together, they're in the classrooms asking questions so that they can get to understanding, and they're not worried about what their sisters think because we're all there because we love one another. I feel like it just releases them to be their best. And for example, one young woman came to us at the beginning of sixth grade, and we went over to say hi to her at at student parent orientation, and we were like, "Hello," and her mom just said she's not going to talk to you. They're like, okay. Right? She was
Mm.
just a very shy young
Mhm.
woman. She is one of our student leaders now. She's outgoing. She knows how to introduce herself to people. She welcomes new students into the building. But I just feel like in a lower stress environment, she was released to be her best, to try new things, to get the support that she needed. And then they just learn confidence, and then they take that with them into the mixed gender situations
Mhm.
rather than always kind of feeling unconfident.
And what mixed gender situations do you offer?
Well, we don't really think they're all that great till about eighth
Um,
grade. So I
Yeah.
mean, there are certain sports. Track is co-ed. There are so many brothers and sisters that they know one another. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot of that socially these kids get together and they have fun. It's just really during the school day that we create the
mhm.
separation.
Mhm.
But now that there's an eighth grade, we've thought of some fun. An eighth grade dinner. What else do we have on tap?
Well, and yeah, as we have two high schools together, there will be a few co-ed programs like choir and theater programs will be co-ed once we have that at both high schools. We do a prom right now for our high school boys, and they know girls from other schools that come with them, but it'll be fun when that can be, a shared prom between both schools. There are students who go to the church youth group on Wednesday, which is in the same building as the school. And so there are definitely those opportunities for interaction. We just don't think that needs to happen in a seventh grade math class.
Mhm.
We don't think you're going to be any better of a student because the opposite sex was there while you were trying to learn how to multiply fractions.
Yeah, I agree. I am delighted that you all are taking this approach. I will say there was a study done on effectiveness of group discussions, which I coached when I was teaching at a private school. And I can't remember the metrics by which they measured this, but they did say that group discussions went better when the group was composed of both boys and girls. And
Well, we see that playing out at Crossover because John touched on some of the teaching strategies they employ at the boys' school to best serve boys. We have realized at the girls' school that the main job of middle school girls is to talk. So we use conversation all the time in our classrooms to reinforce material, to explore new ideas. There's tons of talking that happens, and those conversations do stay way more focused and way more on topic in an all female situation. Using conversation in co-ed classrooms was a lot more tricky for me when I was teaching at a high school that was co-ed.
Yeah. Well, there's a voice of experience for sure. That's very important. So, would you say the goal for all of your students is to go on to a 4-year college?
No, I wouldn't say that. We want students to achieve their potential. And we know that there are a lot of students who should be in college and need the right high school environment so that they can be prepared for it, be equipped for it, be accepted into it. But we also know that there are so many other jobs out there that don't require a 4-year degree. And there are skill sets where a 4-year degree isn't going to be a fun experience for you and it's not going to serve you in life. I had a friend asking me today, hey, where can I get my car worked on out north? And I could tell him where there were tire shops, but we need more auto mechanics who can fix your engine out north. That's not something you need a 4-year college degree for, but it's something our community needs. And so for us, we really want students just to maximize that potential. And if that means that you're becoming a firefighter, if that means you're becoming an EMT, if that means that you're starting an auto shop, if that means that you are getting a 4-year degree and starting a business, going on even to graduate school, law school, medical school, there's all sorts of paths. And we want to find the right one for our students, but we don't define our success by percentage of students who attend college or graduate from college. Yeah.
We really want to see our students make a successful transition from high school to the next phase of their life. And if the next phase of their life is working and like sustaining themselves well and starting a family, we want to facilitate that transition. If their next step is college, we want to make sure that they successfully take that step. And that's one of the beauties of really helping our students go to tech or TCC while they're still in high school. A lot of our Tulsa has a fantastic program where every student who graduates in Tulsa can go to Tulsa Community College and get their associates for free. And so we want to see a lot of our students do that and get exposure through those classes to the medical field or start working on a 4-year diploma. But what we really want to see is that after high school, they make a good transition to the next phase that helps them become a self sufficient adult.
Yeah. Yeah, and for first generation college students in particular, the thing I worry about is taking out a loan for that first semester or two of college, and then you realize that college isn't a good fit for you. But you've already got the loan. And so you drop out, you have no degree to show for it. All you have is the debt that you still need to pay off. And so we don't want that mismatch of a student being told that college is the only path when really there was a ticket to a well-paying job and financial stability and being able to support a family without taking on that debt, without necessarily going to a university. So it's finding the path that's right for our students, whether that involves college or not.
And I will say, I think we also think of college in a very narrow way that it has to be the experience that comes right after high school. And that's also not correct. I think a lot of our students will go be successful working and then decide a college degree is going to enhance this experience. And then they're going to be mature enough to complete it well. I remember a lot of 18-year-olds in my college class that were not mature enough to be there.
We had Tammy Peterson on from Dallas, who's a career and college coach, and episode 10 she talks about going into the trades and how that's the best choice for a lot of kids, and the college industrial complex has not guided them in that way, and also it doesn't guide people into the ministry. You're not going to see that on any proficiency tests, based on your scores. You ought to be a missionary. You ought to be
It's a
a
great
theology professor, but that is a career path for some people. Well, let me talk to you just a little bit about being a principal, and John, you wrote an article, I think it was for Oklahoma Policy Institute a few years ago about teacher
Mhm.
retention and why we had a problem in Oklahoma, and I would say throughout public schools nationally, with teachers leaving either their school or the whole profession. And you bravely and accurately said it isn't just salary. It has to do with conditions of teaching, just like job conditions anywhere matter to a human being.
Mhm.
And you talked about class size, you talked about discipline and administrative support. So here you are as an administrator. What's it like to give that administrative support to keep your teachers happy and effective?
Yeah, I remember writing that article, and actually my dissertation at OU was over teacher turnover and what leads to it and what you can do to prevent it. Some level of turnover in any organization is healthy. You're just going to have people who reach retirement age, who the job's not a good fit for. So it's not like you want 0% turnover every single year. But obviously in Oklahoma, and I think in schools nationally since COVID, turnover is at a really unhealthy high level, and it's teachers burning out of the profession. It's not that they aren't cut out to be teachers, it's not that it's the wrong fit for them. It's just that the working conditions are so grueling and the support isn't there. And I don't want to point fingers just at public school, but I think that it's so much more than the financial and the salary considerations. One of the things in my dissertation that I learned through that process was that three of the things I looked at were faculty trust in the principal, faculty trust in their colleagues, and faculty trust in students to try to see which of these would be predictive of teachers being more committed to the organization, being less likely to turn over. And faculty trust in students actually did not matter that much, was not very predictive of the turnover decision. But faculty trust in colleagues and faculty trust in principals, those were both really important. And that makes a certain kind of sense because the students are the work, they're the job. And so, you might trust them, you might not trust them, but you're there to try to help them. And you want them to become more trustworthy. You want to see them learn and grow in all sorts of ways, but you have to know that you're part of a team and that you have a leader where you guys have each other's back, where you're not the only one working hard, where, if there's a problem, if there's a situation, your principal is going to support you and back you up. And that could look like a lot of different things. I think that student discipline is a big part of it. And it's incumbent on school leaders to have a school wide discipline system to make sure that rules are going to be standard and fair and enforced throughout the building. That's a culture creation issue ultimately, and you need strong school leadership to make that happen. When that does happen, teachers know that they're in an environment where their work is going to be supported, and it makes it so much more possible for them to do the thing that they're in the classroom to do in the first place. So our turnover rate is a lot better at crossover than in previous organizations that I was a part of, and I do think we've created an environment where teachers feel like, okay, here I can actually teach. I've had teachers tell me that. I finally feel like I can teach at crossover. This is what I got in the classroom to do. And when you feel that way, why would you want to leave the position? If the salary meets your family's needs and if you're actually getting to do the thing that you got into education to do, of course you'd want to stay. That crossover is a great place to teach. I've taught English and history and Latin for crossover at different times. And even for myself, it's a different experience in our classroom than I ever got to have when I was in public school.
Oh, okay. And Joanna, how do you support your faculty and staff?
Well, I look to John because he was here before me. He has a very traditional background in education. And so he really supports crossovers in all the ways that you would expect a traditional principal to do it. My background is in journalism, and I got into education because when I had my children, I realized that I actually love all children. I just enjoy working with students. And so I got brought on to start the girls' school and really implement a lot of the systems that John had going at the boys' school. And so I really look, at kind of what he has done at the boys' school and how it has worked. And so the boys' school started 7 years ago,
Yeah.
and this is the fourth year for the third year, excuse me, for the girls' school, we have a sixth, seventh, and an eighth grade. And I always say that we got to stand on very tall shoulders. We did not have a lot of the problems that they encountered early on at the boys' school because great systems were already in place. So one of the things that I feel that that has been allowed me to do a job well of supporting the staff is just the mentorship that I've received from the boys' school, kind of pointing me in the right direction of, here's what we need to do to support teachers in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I will say one of the programs that they created was a professional program that we hire teachers as probationary teachers, and we have kind of a 2-year window of intense training and evaluations. And I was talking to a woman, this is her first year teaching at Crossover, and I just wanted to hear from her, like, how has this professional program felt? Because you have 2 years to make professional status, meet certain benchmarks. And she said, this is the first school where I feel like I have really received good training on what the expectations are and how to meet them.
Wow.
And so we try to be very clear. Our vice principal here just, reminds us constantly that clarity is kindness. So we try to be very clear with expectations. We also really talk about, our vice principal who's in charge of staff development talks about bites, not books. We're just looking to see people move to the next step, and the next step. And we really feel like we honor progress. And so we're looking for people's progress. And our motto is to develop great teachers, not hire great teachers. So we're very committed to the process of staff development.
I love.
I mean, we will hire great teachers, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
But either way, we'll develop you, we'll hire you, whichever way you.
Well, I want to ask a quicker question to John. And how's it going with LinkedIn and your ad for teachers? Tell our listeners what happened.
Oh my gosh. Kafka-esque is the word that comes to mind. This was about a year ago. The spring semester is kind of the hiring season for schools. You're trying to find your teachers for the vacancies you expect to have next year. And so I had posted our teacher vacancies in a few different places, and one of them was LinkedIn. And as soon as I posted the job description and the vacancy at LinkedIn, I got like a little notification that it was flagged for review and it wasn't being shown. And, it was kind of this labyrinthine. Okay, let me try to find this regulation. Okay, this policy. I couldn't even tell what rule they said we were violating with our job posting. And so I requested a review, and the review was denied. And I would try to go through, okay, let me talk to a customer support person. And no one would tell me why our job posting was not allowed, just that it went against community standards. And what I suspect is it has something to do either with the fact that our job description is looking for Christian teachers because we are a Christian school. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that our schools are described as all male and all female. But it was like they knew that we were breaking a rule and they would not tell us which rule we were breaking, I think because we have a constitutional right from the First Amendment to say that we are hiring Christian teachers for a Christian school. There's a ministerial exception for folks who are working in Christian education where it's not discrimination. It's just this is a bona fide job requirement of working in this environment. And so we don't advertise on LinkedIn. LinkedIn does not want us to post our jobs. And I tried again just to see what would happen about a month ago. And the exact same trigger got pulled. They won't let us post our jobs there. And we'll find our teachers elsewhere, I guess. But it was a really bizarre experience of trying to find out, well, what rule exactly are we breaking? What's the problem? What is it about our job description that you don't like? And I knew that they didn't want to say, well, you can't say it's only for Christians, because the First Amendment says we can do that, just that it went against their standards. And sorry, you can only request a review one time. There's nothing more I can do. Can I speak to a supervisor? No, you can't. I'm afraid that's the end.
Wow, that's horrific. Yeah. I wonder if there are any other Christian schools that have been able to advertise for faculty on LinkedIn. That would be
and maybe
how they did it.
Maybe if I just posted kind of a neutered job description, if I abbreviated it, if I took out certain words or phrases and let people just get the hint when they go to our website that we are a Christian school and we're building a Christian faculty, I could probably get past the filters that way. I thought about doing it, and it wasn't worth it
And
to
you
me.
shouldn't have
I don't want
to.
to be ashamed of who we are. Yeah, we're a Christian school. We hire Christian teachers. You wouldn't want to work here if you didn't share our values, and I don't see the problem with that. But LinkedIn felt differently.
I'm sorry. Well, we have to wrap up. I know you're so busy, both of you, and I really appreciate your sitting down together. That just that is probably quite an achievement. But just wanted to know, is there any question you had hoped I would ask that I haven't asked, or anything else you'd like to share with my audience?
I don't remember you asking, and how can the teachers who are listening to this podcast are interested in restarting their career at Crossover Prep? How can they find? No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
well,
But crossoverprep.org, if people are interested in learning more just about our mission, about our organization, whether they want to join our team, whether they live in Tulsa and want to send their kids here, whether they want to contribute financially, whether they're just curious about the model, folks who work at other schools and want to come visit, see what we do. We love that kind of collaboration. So people who are curious, I'd encourage them to visit crossoverprep.org, where you can find our contact info, you can find our job application, you can find our our enrollment application for new students, but all of that lives on the website. And I would encourage people who want to find out more to visit us at crossoverprep.org.
sounds good. Thanks a bunch, you guys, and God bless. Subscribe and review Conversation Balloons on your favorite podcast platform. Find me at leahfarish.com and on Instagram at LeahFarish.